Alrighty, well, first and foremost, welcome to our dissertation and thesis formatting workshop. I'm going to go ahead and let our presenters introduce themselves. So, Angela, Alexa, if you want to go ahead and tell everyone hello.
Hi, I'm Angela Speaker, and I'm the Audit and Compliance Coordinator for College of Graduate Studies. So I'm the person behind the scenes that is helping Sophia to review your dissertations and thesis for formatting guidelines when they get submitted. I'm also in charge of reviewing all of your forms that are being submitted. So some of you might be on the verge of graduating this semester and you're submitting forms E and F and B and C, and if you know, you know. If you don't, we're going to cover it in the presentation. But I also am responsible for making sure that all of your ducks are in a row to be cleared to graduate. So that includes your formatting being done and also all of the forms being submitted and your degree planner being all checked off and good to go. I also oversee the graduate advisors, so your academic advisors that are in your colleges. I oversee those folks as well. Nice to meet you all.
And I'm Alexa Height. I am the Scholarly Communication Librarian here in Marion Jeff Bell Library. And I'm here today to talk to you all about copyright and open access. So if you have any questions related to that or anything related to your research, I'm the person to contact.
Awesome. And my name is Sophia Zahner. I work alongside Angela and Alexa sometimes as well here in the College of Graduate Studies. One of my main jobs is I oversee GROW, which is our Graduate Resource Opportunity Workspace. And I also assist with ProQuest. I do some form work with Angela as well, and all that fun stuff here in the College of Graduate Studies. So we're excited that you're here. Hopefully you learn a little bit more about dissertation and thesis formatting, along with, like Alexa talked about, copyright. So we are going to go ahead and jump in. So this is kind of what we're looking to talk about today. Angela's going to cover some important dates that you will need to know as far as submitting forms. We're going to go over some checklist items. So as you get closer to submitting forms, kind of what needs to be submitted, when does it need to be submitted. Then we'll get into the bulk, which we're going to talk about formatting and how to start formatting if you haven't already done so with our templates. Some common errors that we see in our students that submit their thesis and dissertation. How do you submit your final document? And then Alexa will talk a little bit about copyright and open access. And we'll talk about some helpful things to get you through all this craziness, and then we can open it up to questions. We're happy to answer questions along the way, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask us a question during the presentation. I can also monitor the chat so I can look at questions that way as well. So please let us know along the way, or you can wait till the end if you have questions. Okay.
All right, so we're going to show you some important dates, and in this presentation, when it's online, you'll be able to click on these and link you to those. But every semester we have important dates for those of you who are graduating and have a thesis or a dissertation to turn in. So this is for our thesis students, our master's dates for spring 2021. Your last day to submit your Form B, which was your agreement to schedule a thesis defense, was April 12th. So that should be done and out of the way. Your last day to defend is April 16th, and that's just in a couple of days. And then your last day to submit your Form C, which is your defense report, and the last day to upload your final thesis to ProQuest is April 30th. For our MFA students, there are alternate dates for you, but you can see those below. And for our doctoral students, you have, most of your deadlines have passed, but we did have one coming up here shortly. So you should have submitted your Form E already. You should have defended by April 2nd. And then we should have your final dissertation turned in, as well as your Form F, your Survey of Earned Doctorates, all by April 16th, so in just a couple of days. Our summer 21 dates to be aware of if you're coming up on summer rather than this spring. So we have those dates for you. And you could take a picture, or just like I said, we're going to have the link so that you can get to that page and bookmark it for your reference. We are getting some of those things turned in now. Due to COVID, we are making accommodations for students to defend virtually. I haven't seen anyone defending in person again quite yet, but check with your committee chair. If you're wanting to defend in person, you can certainly ask them. And as long as you're meeting CDC guidelines, you can probably work to accommodate that. You do have to book your own room if you're doing that in person. But of course, we support your virtual defenses, and we don't limit you to specific software, so you don't have to use WebEx. But if you do choose to use WebEx, that's our university sponsored software. So we would provide practice meetings with you if you want to just kind of shake off those nervous things that you might have about presenting online. You can schedule that to practice with us and just run through your presentation, see how WebEx works, how it feels to be the host of it rather than just a participant. So your checklists, this is very important for folks to be monitoring for themselves, but you can also check with our office if you want to just see where we have you at. So our doctoral students, you needed to have turned in forms A through D prior to your graduating semester. So again, you're going to have the links to see what all those forms are at the end of the presentation. And then your forms E through G are required during your graduating semester. So those are the things that we would see you turning in that semester that you are defending, and then your defense gets pass or fail, and all these forms come in during that semester. Forms H through K are as needed. These might be things like if you had a committee member change, a leave of absence, things like that. If you had any of those during your time with us, we need to have those forms on file. And then your final dissertation, survey of earned doctorates, and your dissertation service charge. So our master's students, it's pretty similar, but the forms are not necessarily labeled the same. So if you were coming from a master's to a doctorate, it's going to look different. We have to have your Form A and your degree plan prior to your graduating semester. B and C are required during the graduating semester, and then D and I through K are as needed. And then you have to submit your final manuscript. We don't have the no survey for you all for your earning of your master's, and no processing fee for that, for your thesis.
Okay, so as we get into formatting, there are going to be some things that we're going to look at. So first and foremost, we go through ProQuest. So as you're ready to submit your thesis or dissertation, you're going to use ProQuest, and we have actually some pretty helpful links on our website to get you through ProQuest. It's actually pretty simple. Once you create an account on ProQuest, it does walk you through step by step of exactly what you need to do, and it actually asks you a lot of questions. So if you have a little bit of time to spare, you'll sit down and create your ProQuest account and go from there. Some general formatting guidelines, though. Everything needs to be 1-inch margins on the pages, and we'll talk a little bit about this when I open up one of the templates. And on the preliminary pages, we'll see, 12-point font, Times New Roman, and page titles in all caps. And so these are just some general things that we look for right off the bat. And again, you'll see what I'm talking about when we open up one of our templates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a thesis traditional template, and we can go from there, and we can also look at the dissertation one as well.
We have a couple of questions in the chat that are popping up. So do you need to make a ProQuest account early, or is it fine to do when you're getting closer to the end of your thesis? You can do it that semester that you are submitting your thesis. So you could make your account maybe a week before the deadline to upload and finish up creating that account when you're uploading. And then is there a cost to upload to ProQuest? Yes, there is a cost to earning or to purchasing the distribution copy, but we're going to cover that later in the presentation.
Thank you for looking at those. Okay, so we'll have this presentation up on our website, and everything that we're clicking on, they're all clickable links. So if you want to just head on to our PowerPoint after this is over, so you have a quick access to kind of everything we're talking about today. This is our dissertation and thesis formatting guideline page. So here you can see some general formatting guidelines, kind of what I just talked about a little bit. And then really the one you're going to look for right here is the templates tab. And here you'll see all the templates that we offer our students. So if you're still in the process of, formatting your thesis or dissertation, we really encourage students to open up one of our templates and just kind of start from there. Or if you already have some of your stuff going on and you've already gone through it, you can actually copy and paste it into the template. It really just makes it easier for you and for us, so that way we can make sure that everything looks the way that it's supposed to. So this is our traditional thesis template, and so you can see here, this is our title page. Here you'll see, like I mentioned earlier, your title of the document will be in all caps here at the top, a thesis by your name in all caps. Here you'll put the university that you received your bachelor's at, and again, you'll see similar things like this potentially throughout the document. Just delete this box and saving the final copy. So make sure you delete the red box before you submit that to ProQuest. And then here you'll see it submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of, your degree name, and program name. So make sure that you know exactly what your program title is and your degree title is. Sometimes we see students that are slightly off, or maybe you forget the word of. Angela, I don't know which ones we usually see that on, but sometimes students will miss a the or an of. So those are things to look out for.
Yes, and if you're not sure, because I know that there have been some name changes throughout the years in different programs, you feel free to reach out to our office, and we have our contact information at the end for you to just say, hey, can you check what my degree is called? So one that I got last year was Coastal and Marine System Sciences. A lot of students were missing the and. So it's real simple things that you can forget, especially when you're finishing up this document that you just want to be done with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you, like she said, if you're not sure, you just let us know and we can definitely help you out with that. You'll have Texas A&M Corpus Christi here. One thing I want to point out, and this is the same on the next couple of pages, down here at the bottom, you're going to put the month and year of graduation. So say you're graduating this spring 2021, you're going to put May 2021 down here at the bottom. Even though you might have completed your thesis or dissertation in April, this is going to be the month and year of graduation. So just make sure you keep that in mind. Maybe it's December 2021 or whatever it may be, but that's what this is here for. Okay, and then we move down here, you're going to put your full legal name on our copyright page, and then again, month and year of graduation. And we'll scroll down. Now this is the committee member page. Again, the title up here in all caps, a thesis by your name in all caps. And here is where you're going to put your committee members' names. This is an example of somebody that has 3 members on their committee. Sometimes we see students that have 4 members, and that's totally fine. You can add a name down here kind of on a 4th row centered with your committee chair. Or sometimes we see it 2 and 2, so it really just depends. Either way is fine. We just want to make sure it looks even and kind of symmetrical and uniform across the board. Okay, and then you're also, again, down here, going to put the month and year of graduation. And then we get into the abstract. So we did have some changes to our template recently, and these are going to be starting this semester. So really the change that was made was we start numbering pages on our abstract page. So you can see the first 3 pages don't have page numbers at the bottom, but abstract is where we're going to start that. And we're actually going to start with Roman numeral 4. So you're going to start here with Roman numeral 4, and you're going to do Roman numerals until you get to chapter 1. So that's just something to keep in mind. So all of our templates have been updated with all those changes. So if you download one of our templates right now, you'll see the change made. Okay. And then we move on to dedication, which is page 5, or depending on how long your abstract is. And and then we have our acknowledgments, and then we move into the table of contents. So some students will ask us, well, I don't have a dedication or an acknowledgement. That's totally fine. Those are your pages. And if you don't have one, that's totally fine. If you do, that's awesome. Totally up to you whether you want to include that in your document. Okay, so we move down to the table of contents. This page really can be the trickiest page in the entire document because sometimes formatting can get a little wonky. So these are some things to look out for. Obviously, you're going to have table of contents at the top. You'll want to delete this traditional format, these words right here. You're going to see the word contents and page, and these are going to kind of be your rulers as you use this to kind of format your table of contents. But you'll see here abstract, dedication, acknowledgements, and table of contents are all up here at the top. And then if you have a list of figures and tables, those come after. The C in contents is going to start with your letters here. So this is all going to be in line with the C in contents. So the A in abstract, the D in dedication. And it's going to kind of be the same on the other side. The E in page is going to be in line with your numbers over here as well. So Roman numeral 4, clicked it. Roman numeral 4 ends with this letter V, so V is actually going to be in line with the E in page. I know that gets kind of confusing, but that's really a good way to look at it. And I'll show you some tips and tricks on how to make sure everything's in line here in just a second. Okay. And this is going to be how that's formatted. And then you can scroll down to list of figures, and list of tables are going to be kind of formatted in the same way, just different wording there for list of tables. Okay, and then from that we get into the body of your work. When Angela and I are going through students that have submitted, we're not reading the content. We're really our main job is to make sure that when it goes to publishing, it looks perfect, that none of your data, your words, your graphs, your charts, your images are cut off. And so that's really the main part of our job, is that we make sure everything stays within the lines, it looks good. But just a disclaimer, we are not reading the content of your work at all. Okay, so this is our template. Does anybody have any questions about this? Angela, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. I know it's a lot of information. Anybody have any questions about that? No? And actually I said I would show you I'll show you the dissertation one. It's pretty much identical. Okay, so nothing crazy, nothing changes really besides the wording, right? A dissertation by, no huge formatting changes really here, except obviously you'll have your bachelor's and master's degrees listed here. And then just obviously some wording changes, like I said, a dissertation by, things like that. Nothing crazy here. And again, your committee member page is going to look a little bit different because of the members of your committee, but nothing too crazy as far as formatting changes between the thesis and dissertation.
So a couple of questions in chat. So full legal name, that would be however you are signing your name on legal documents. So I would put Angela Nicole Speaker because that's what is on my legal documents. And yeah, so that's what you would put there. And then someone asked if you have an associate's degree, would you add it also? That's actually a great question that I have not been asked. I would think you could add it. Typically, I haven't not seen that, but I wouldn't think that you would need to exclude it for any reason. So if you'd like to include your associate's degree, I believe you can. You might want to check with your committee chair. The faculty know best what they've seen and what's most acceptable in publications. So if your committee chair feels comfortable including it and you do as well, then that's good with us.
Thank you for monitoring those. I couldn't see them. Okay, so any other questions on the template? Those are great questions. super easy to use. They're already formatted for you. So we really encourage students to go ahead and open them up and start putting their information in already. Or if you already have some information that you've been working on, it's super simple to just copy and paste it over. Yes, you can. I just saw that one pop up. Yeah, so copy and paste is sometimes the easiest way to go. If you've already started working, you can just copy and paste your work over into the template. That way you already have kind of it ready to go, and you can just fill in the missing blanks. Okay.
All right, so checking your margins in Word. So one of the issues that we run into with the dissertations and theses is things falling outside of the 1-inch margin. So even though you've set it up with the margins, sometimes things will still fall out. So there's a couple of ways to check it to see if your information is within those margins. So on Word, if you are still working within your document as a Word document, go to the view in the toolbar, then check off ruler and grid lines. And then this is what you're going to see. You see these grid lines that are now on the screen. So when you do that, it goes throughout the whole document and adds that grid line feature. And you'll see this chart here, figure 215, it is going to fall off of the 1-inch margins on the right-hand side. So this would be a case where, I mean, if you haven't caught it already by yourself, then we would tell you, okay, this is going to fall off on the right-hand side. You need to adjust your figure so that we don't lose your data. So it's when you do that, it makes it a little bit more obvious what's going to fall off. Sometimes you see it on the left, the right, sometimes it's both, but this is how you can see that in Word. Someone asked if we're meant to submit tables and figures separately from your manuscript. No, it would be included in your manuscript text. Yeah, so it's all just, it's one document. Checking your margins in PDF. So if you're already working on your document within PDF, some folks go ahead and convert it. When you submit it, it gets converted to PDF. You want to check on your margins this way by going to View, Show Hide, Rulers and Grids, and Rulers. And now we'll show you what that does. So this is unfortunately page by page. It doesn't put this line up on the whole document, but you would then go with that ruler and you'll double click on the little hashtag about 1 inch in on either side, but we're giving you an example of the right hand side. You double click it and it will create this blue snap line down the page. And so now we see that image is still cutting off on the right hand side in this PDF version of the document. So it's another double check, good way to see if your documents are going to fall off on either side of the margin. You'll kind of get an eye for it as you go through your document, or maybe it's just because we look at hundreds of these. We can kind of see like, oh, I think that might fall off. And so then we'll go do snap lines and double check those. So some common errors that we see on these things that are submitted to us on theses, dissertations. For our science students, typically your proposal that you submit within your department and your college, that proposal usually has to get signed off on by your committee members, but that is not the case for your final thesis and dissertation. So that committee member page, we don't want to see signatures on that page. We want a nice clean copy. So don't have anyone sign it. Varying font sizes, we will, from time to time, we won't see the 12-point font, or we will see a varying style of font. So just make sure it's Times New Roman and 12-point font throughout, even down to the page numbers in the footer. And I don't know why, but it's become really easy to see that that's like Arial, or that's size 13. So just double check that everything throughout is size 12 Times New Roman. Varying justifications, sometimes we see a paragraph here, it was like left justified and everything else is correct. So you can check on that. And then pagination. So what we mean is the page numbers. Sometimes we see people put the Roman numeral 4 that starts on abstract. We'll see it on the title page. And it can even happen just in formatting your document that the page number pops all over the place. So just make sure that pagination is starting on the abstract page with Roman numeral 4. And then again, the 1-inch margins for your tables and figures. That's another common error. So the submission guidelines, and this will answer the question that we had in the chat about where you submit your dissertation for review. So you're going to submit your dissertation through that ProQuest account that you create. And that's at our ETD admin TAMUCC website. So you'll create your account through ProQuest, and all of the submission for your document will go through there. If you're having a real difficult time, we can look at it through email ahead of time, but typically we want you to just put your best foot forward in ProQuest. What you think is final, you know, you've done all the modifications and revisions that you think that are needed, and then you submit it into ProQuest. And we're going to look through your submissions within ProQuest, and we'll get back to you within ProQuest. I think we might cover that a little later too, Sophia. Okay. And all of the binding is handled through ProQuest. So what you're going to do is you're going to be required to order 1 university copy for the library. Your department might require you to order a copy, but typically we don't see that any longer. So just 1 copy is required to be purchased, and then you can purchase personal copies if you'd like. And the binding is, it's really nice. I wish I had one right here to grab for you, but it's a really nice binding book of your manuscript. And the ProQuest, they print anything that you have in color. It's true to the color. Your charts and graphs are really clear. It just is, it's a really high quality bound copy of your book. So when you order it, you can expect to get your copy between 8 to 12 weeks of approval for your manuscript. So this is the costs. I know folks were wondering what the costs are. So your distribution copy that you are required to order is $48. Your personal copies we'll get to on the next slide. It varies by size and bulk order. For our doctoral students, there is a dissertation service charge. So be aware of that. That is paid outside of ProQuest. And so that's not within your ProQuest setup when you're ordering your copies. It's a separate service charge that you need to pay. Then we have the copyright fee and the open access publishing fee, which are optional, and Alexa is going to address those 2 options here in a little bit. So really, you could get away with just ordering the $48 copy, and then if you're a dissertation, you have your $100 fee. That's maybe a little hard to read for some, but it will be on our presentation, and the PowerPoint will be available to you. So your options here, you have hardcover and softcover options, and you have 2 different size options. And so then if you buy 1 to 2 copies of the 8.5 by 11, it's $62, and it goes down from there for bulk orders. And the softcover is a bit cheaper at $45 for the 8.5 by 11. And that's the typical size. When you get your distribution copy, it's the 8.5 by 11 size. All right, we're gonna let Alexa address the copyright and open access.
Yeah, I do have a few copies of I think they're all theses. This one's from 2015, so they might look a little bit different, but they are like actual bound books that we get copies from the library. I should have mentioned in my intro that I'm also the manager of our institutional repository. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to open access. But every thesis and dissertation that is published through ProQuest, we also get a digital copy in our institutional repository. So for the additional copyright, we just went over all the costs that you have to pay, and this is an optional cost. The cost for the additional copyright is $55, so it's kind of a lot or not a lot, depending on how you want to think about it. I always say that it's basically like an insurance policy. You pay a one-time fee of $55 for that additional copyright, and then if and when someone infringes on your copyright and you take them to court, you don't have to pay those additional court fees that on this slide we say it ranges from $750,000 to $150,000 plus attorney fees per copyright infraction. I will say you probably won't ever take anyone to court, but you never know, and that's why it's insurance, and you can pay the $55 and not have to worry about it. You own the copyright to your work, and when it's published through ProQuest and the institutional repository, you still own that copyright. So if people are misusing your work, you can, ask them politely to stop and just desist. But if you do need to take them to court for infringing on your copyright, it can get very expensive. So it's $55 on top of all those additional fees. You might not want to pay for it, but for peace of mind, you also might want to pay for it. So it's completely up to you. We're just kind of telling you what your options are and why you might want to pay that $55. So yeah, if we can go to the next slide. The other optional fee is the open access fee. I will address your question, Roberto. I love talking about copyright, so we will get to that. But for open access, like I said, we're going to get a copy of your dissertation or thesis in our institutional repository. Most everything in the institutional repository is considered open access in that anyone with internet access can download PDFs of works that are in the institutional repository. Often we will have graduates asked to put an embargo, which means you can put it in the repository so it's discoverable in terms of the record. People can see that I've written it, they can read my abstract, they can see when I graduated, when I defended my thesis or dissertation, but they can't download that PDF because I am either trying to or I have published either part of my work or the work in its entirety with another publisher. So that additional open access fee here is, again, it's up to you, it's your personal preference, but what open access does is make your research available to the widest number of readers. So ProQuest dissertations and theses are available for free download to people with that database. So we are an institution, the library pays money to have access to this database. If there's somebody outside of an institution, they're not affiliated with a college or a research center, they might not have access to what we call behind that paywall. But if you put it in ProQuest dissertation and theses open, anyone with access to the internet will be able to read and download for free. But like I said, at some point, a copy of your work will be in the institutional repository, and that is open access. And we do have Google Scholar crawls our repository, for example. So if somebody is searching for something, using search terms related to your topic, they might find it. They might not find it if they're just looking at ProQuest and dissertation theses just in that database and they don't have access to the full database. So I hope that makes sense. Open access is complicated and kind of convoluted, but if you have questions, please let me know. So going back to Roberto's question, what gets copyrighted? The paper itself, the methods used, the code, the data. Make it so that your paper is for research only, and in regards to that, how does open source materials work with copyright if you use those in your work? Okay, so there's a lot of questions here. I'll try to answer them. If I'm not interpreting your question correctly, please let me know. So what gets copyrighted is anything, there are two main things for something to be copyrighted. One, it has to be in a fixed and tangible format. So written down, printed, emailed, something that I can read it or consume it in some way. So a recording of music, for example, or sheet music, it's written down, it's recorded in some way, shape, or form. There also has to be at least an original amount of creativity for something to be copyrighted. So for example, the periodic table in and of itself is fact. It is just scientific facts listed in a table. So you could, add designs or color and make the arrangement copyrighted. Or, for example, you could write a melody and sing the song. The lyrics is just scientific terms, so you're not actually copyrighting the lyrics itself, but the melody to that song of the periodic table is copyrighted. So the paper itself, your dissertation or your thesis, you own the copyright to that. The methods used, the code, the data, that could have its own copyright. The methods you use could be copyrighted by whoever designed those methods. The code that you use could be open source code, so anyone can use it, or there might be a code, and I might be misinterpreting when you say the code there, but the code could be copyrighted or it could be open source. Anyone can use it and do whatever they want with it. Usually, if it's not open, then you're probably tinkering with it illegally, right? Data, unfortunately, like I mentioned, if it's scientific fact, there's nothing creative about it. You can't really copyright data. You can protect data for a lot of different reasons. For example, if releasing data would be harmful to the test subjects, or you can obviously, like, you put in the time to create that data, so you can make sure. And there's a lot of debate about this on ethics of sharing data or keeping it so that you can write as many papers as you can before you share it outward and other people can use your data to do their own research. But data in and of itself is not copyrighted because it's just a list of facts. Of course, you can create graphs and you can create tables and you can do your interpretations, and all of that stuff is copyrighted, but the data itself cannot be copyrighted, unfortunately. So if you do publish your work open access in terms of making that your paper is for research only. So when you go through ProQuest and you're going to publish your thesis or dissertation, you're going to be asked about a Creative Commons license. And at that point, there's going to be some questions about what you want people to be able to do with your work. So we're in a higher institution. You have all been using copyrighted materials throughout your education, and you have not necessarily gone to the copyright owner, whether that's the author or person who produced the work or the publisher, to ask if you can use that work. And that's because there are exemptions in the copyright law, one of which is the Teach Act and one of which is the Fair Use Exemption clause. And that means that if you're using work for education or research purposes, you don't necessarily have to ask for permission. There are limits to this, and that's a whole other workshop by itself. And if you're interested, let me know. But in terms of if you want to say that you want people to only use your paper for research only, there is a Creative Commons license that says you can do what you want with my work in terms of reusing it, as long as it's not for commercial purposes. So we often say educational purposes only or nonprofit use only for fair use. And that is a really great exemption for not having to ask the copyright holder for permission to use their work, but it can only go so far. So if you have questions about that, please let me know. I think there might be one other part to that question. How does open source materials work with copyright if you use those in your work? So if it's open source or there isn't copyright, by using those works, you're not copywriting that material, but what your product out of using those open source materials, that part is copyrighted. Once it's openly licensed, if that's what you mean by open source, it stays openly licensed. You can't then shut it down later if it's been made open, if that makes sense. I do not know the answer to the question if the dissertation has the C copyright symbol, but if it's printed, if it's published through ProQuest, it is copyrighted. You no longer have to have that C to make something copyrighted. You no longer have to register your work to make it copyrighted. That $55 that we talked about on the last slide, you don't have to pay that to copyright your work. It's already copyrighted as soon as you write it, put it on paper, so to speak. We don't use paper any longer, hardly. But we don't have to like register. It's not like a trademark or patent where you have to get it registered for it to be protected. It's protected under copyright law.
Although, yes, that C is there on that
Awesome.
page with the your full legal name. So it's there even if it isn't necessary anymore.
Okay, so after you submit your thesis, your dissertation to ProQuest, Angela and I both get a notification that a student has submitted their document. And really the first step is just an initial review. So usually I will go in and I'll browse through the document and I'll actually have your thesis or dissertation pulled up along with our template pulled up next to it. And the first initial review is to kind of get some revisions to you. That way we can get started on making sure your document looks great, it's polished, it's perfect before we send it off to publishing. So really that's the first initial review. I'm going to look at it and let you know any additional revisions that need to be made. So you submit your revisions to ProQuest. So when I send you revisions, I'm going to send them through ProQuest. You'll get an email that says, here are the revisions that need to be made. And it also gives you a link to resubmit your revised document. Okay, so you'll submit your revised document. We'll get a notification again. I'll review, and Angela will also probably take a look at it to see if the revisions have been made. And then we'll go through again to see if maybe we missed something the first time. Maybe you needed assistance with the revision, whatever the case may be. And it says we do secondary reviews. We actually probably do 3 and 4 times we look over your document because once we hit publish and we send it off, that's really the final step. We don't get to touch it after that. So we really want to make sure it's absolutely perfect before it leaves our hands and into the hands of ProQuest. Okay, so it's a secondary review, which is true, but we also probably review it, I'd say up to 4, sometimes even 5 times just to make sure it's great. Okay, Angela will make sure you have all of your checklist items. And so actually before it can even be sent off for publishing, you have to have all of your checklist items completed. And then, you'll get an automated notification sent from ProQuest once it's submitted by us for publication. So really everything's going to be done via email. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's a few different notices that you'll see from ProQuest while we're going through this process. So you'll see if you maybe you have one chart that's off on the margins, and then you'll get something called a minor revisions needed. If we see all 15 of your charts and are off margins and you don't have a table of contents page, your numbers are off, then you're going to get something called a major revisions required. So it's typically 1 to 3 revisions. We'll send you minor revisions required. 4 or more, we're going to send major revisions required. Just try not to panic because we will outline it as best we can in email. And if it's really complicated and we're like, this email is not going to make a lot of sense, then we'll reach out to you. Sophia will reach out and say, what if we meet over WebEx and kind of go over your dissertation together or your thesis together? Because a lot of times that can get kind of complicated when we're saying page 5 needs this and that. And even if you feel overwhelmed by just a few of them, then you can still reach out and say, would it be possible if we could just meet? And it's really nice now that we have this ability to do WebEx, you could pull up your document and we're just meeting and saying, hey, this is what we want changed, and you could change it right there live and save it on the fly. So that's a couple of notices you'll see. Then you'll see a notice that says that your document has been accepted. So accepted that's when it goes into like that triple check. We don't see any other errors. Your checklist requirements are all good, and we're just doing that final run through to make sure that we don't see anything else. Typically anything at that point that we see, it's so very minor. And then you'll get that final notification that it is shipped off for publishing. Uh, Shipped off in the in the metaphorical sense. We've hit a button, and now ProQuest is going to begin their publication process. So those are the different notifications you'll see along the way through that submission process.
Yeah, and if at any point in time you're not sure, like Angela said, if we've said something, sometimes things can be, miscommunication can happen very easily over ProQuest or email or whatever. So definitely just let us know. Sometimes revisions can get a little tricky. So we're here to help you every step of the way with those. So as we mentioned before, we have some helpful links here to kind of get you through whatever stage you're in, catalog, handbook, a link to those important dates, forms, guidelines, our templates, defense announcements, and how to submit electronically, and then some helpful links for master's and doctoral students. So these are all clickable, so if you go and you download this PowerPoint, you'll be able to access all those from this one document.
So I see a question, do we submit the dissertation for review way before the defense? So not to our office, not through ProQuest. The document that you're submitting for review before your defense, that's going to go to your committee. So that's a separate process. So what we're referring to when we're submitting to ProQuest, that's your final. It's already been through the committee. The committee has scrutinized it as far as the content already by that point.
Yes, thank you. So as we mentioned, we're here for you every step of the way, even if you're just starting your formatting process, you're ready to submit to ProQuest, or you need help with revisions. We're here for you. So Angela and I are both located in the College of Graduate Studies in Faculty Center 151. So we're on the opposite side of Starbucks in the Faculty Center. And our office is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And you can walk in if you have questions. With COVID, everything's a little bit different. We will all be on campus starting, I think, June 1st, 100% Monday through Friday. Right now, our schedules are a little different. We do rotate on and off campus currently. So if you're looking for us or you want to set up an appointment, probably the best thing to do is to give us a call or email us first so we can let you know if we're here on campus. If you want to set up a WebEx appointment or you want to talk about revisions or anything of that nature, you can always email me or call me as well. My information is on this slide. So if you wanted to set up a, you're not sure how to do WebEx and you're going to defend virtually, or you need help with revisions and you want to meet virtually face-to-face, I can help you via WebEx as well. Just let me know what dates and times work for you, but just email or call me. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Y'all had some really great questions today, and I know that they've all been answered, hopefully. But does anybody have any questions before we log off for the night? And if you think of them later, again, don't be shy to let us know. Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. In 2007, when I did my master's, we submitted our thesis on a disk, and that was supposed to be turned into the library through the department. We never did ProQuest or anything like this. How can I find out if it's accessible at the library?
Alexa could probably answer that for us.
Yeah, definitely. It should be, so if it was submitted on a disk, I'm not sure what format we'll keep it in. But we do have, so we have print copies going back before, yeah, like
This was from 2007, so it's been a while.
2013, yeah. So I think we should have a copy. We might have two actually. One would be physically in the library. I think both would be physically in the library, but I can double check on that. Do you remember the title, or can you give me your name and I can just look for it real quick? It should be, we have a copy in the library by our periodicals on the first floor, and then there would be a copy up in special collections in our archives as well.
Okay. My other question is, would you recommend that I do the ProQuest now, even though it's been years later? Submit it through ProQuest?
Not your former work, no.
Okay, good. Okay. Just double checking on
That
that.
process just came into play for thesis students around, I want to say 2016, 17.
Okay.
So it's fairly recent.
Okay. Just
Oh,
double
and just,
checking on that.
yeah, great question. And just to address this for anyone that might have joined, we don't accept professional papers or research projects or anything like that in ProQuest. So we do get that from time to time, students submitting professional papers or something that they're doing for a class, but this is strictly for thesis and dissertations that we would use ProQuest. Yeah. And luckily we can refund your money if you have submitted something that wasn't supposed to go through there, but just don't do that.
Yeah, all of that can go through the library though, and we can put it in the repository. So if you want to publish your work, the repository does offer a stable URL for items. So it's basically it's there, it's live. We've done that before for either master students who do a capstone project instead of a formal thesis, or creative writing students who don't create a thesis but they still want their work published. We do that in the IR. And Angela, if you want to send anyone my way who does that as well, please do.
Yes.
Alexa, I can send you the info, and if you can check on that, just let me know. I can email you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'll put my email in the chat real quick.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, Adam, that is a great question. You can definitely, if you have data, tables, things that would look awkward in a Word PDF, like you said, you can use a digital repository such as Dryad and link to link the DOI in your work. You might want to talk with your professors. You might want to put the sad image and then with the link to for a better view. Do that. We can also, if you want to use the institutional repository, you can submit your data to us and we can issue a DOI for those items.
If your appendices are pictures, I know sometimes that we get that they're pictures of documents. No, they don't need to be in Times New Roman 12-point font. If it's like a scanned in document, but any kind of wording that you're going to type in does need to be in Times New Roman.
Roberto, I don't know if I'm answering this question correctly, so don't take my word for gospel, but I think that if you'd like people to be able to use the code, feel free to upload it on GitHub and then put that link in your thesis paper. If you're using someone else's code, I would say link to where you got that code rather than publishing it yourself, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions? Y'all have had some really great questions tonight, so thank you for that. Are there any final questions before we close up tonight? Again, this will be available on our website along with our contact information. So if you can't think of your questions now, please don't hesitate to reach out to us so we can make sure we get those answered for you. Awesome. Well, thank everyone so much for coming. Alexa and Angela, thank you so much for your time tonight, and I hope everybody has a great time, and please let us know if we can be any additional assistance to you during your time here.
Yeah, thank you and good luck.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night, everyone.